Hi, I'm Wendy from shinyhappyworld.com, and last week we talked about sewing with stretch fabrics, one of the tricky fabrics. This week we're going to take on another tricky fabric, a napped fabric. I'm going to show you some tricks on sewing with velvet. The problem with napped fabrics is that there are fibers that are sticking straight up out of the fabric, and when you place those fibers face to face or nap to nap, they'll tend to walk against each other, and that'll make the fabric shift around while you're trying to sew it. It happens with velvet and also with corduroy. Not quite as bad with corduroy, but especially bad with velvet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens if you sew this without any pins, which is what I would do if this were a regular quilting cotton. It's already starting to shift over on me, so I'm going to try resetting it. So what happened is that you can see that they didn't stay lined up. My edges started out lined up, but they tended to walk out along the sides there. And I was able to correct it back, but you have to keep stopping and readjusting everything. The other problem is that these started out the same length, and the bottom strip ended up being just a little bit longer than the top strip. If this were, for example, the length of a pair of pants, that bottom strip would be off by a full inch by the time you got to the bottom, or maybe even more, which is not a good thing when you're sewing anything. You want those edges to stay lined up. The answer is to pin and pin and pin like crazy. This is a piece that's ready for sewing. You want to put your pins at least every ½ inch apart. Once you think you've got enough pins in there, go in and throw an extra pin in between all your pins. You cannot pin too much when you're working with velvets. So I'm going to sew this, and I stop at every pin because when I sew over pins I break the needle on my machine, and that's irritating. So it's kind of slow going, but if you pin all along the seam, everything is going to stay lined up, and your fabric is not going to grow more on one side than on the other. Everything just works much better, and you can sew a really precise seam even though the fabric is napped. So I'm going to flip this over because it always looks great from the top, and here's how it looks from the back, which is much better. And I could tell as I was sewing it too that it wasn't shifting or pulling around at me at all. I had to babysit it a lot less. So that's it. There is one secret to working with napped fabrics, and that is to pin, pin, and pin some more. That is true for velvet, it's true for corduroys, especially the wide wale corduroys, but even the narrow wales. Any kind of upholstery fabric that's got a nap to it, any kind of chenille, any kind of fake fur, anything that has, that you can, when you brush across it, you can feel that it feels right in one direction and wrong in the other direction. That's a napped fabric, and that is a fabric that you want to pin like crazy. That's it. I'm Wendy from shinyhappyworld.com. See you next time.